We are going to move on to session 4, which is our lunch session. We actually have, it's kind of in 3 parts. We've had a very serious morning. We're going to lighten it up with a little comic relief with an introduction by the autism mom / comedian Regina Stoops, who will introduce our lunch speaker, Cuong Do. And then after that, we're going to have just a little extra tidbit. I couldn't go a whole conference without talking about a subject that's super important to me, which is civil rights. So some of us are just going to make a little tiny mini pitches on civil rights at the very end before the next break. Okay? Welcome, Regina.
Thank you. I'm going to try to wrestle this off and stand up on stage because that's what we do when we're at a comedy club. And this is a lot like a comedy club, except the lights are on and nobody seems to be drinking. Thank you, Jill, though. I am really excited to be here at this conference. It's amazing. I am really impressed by the efficiency of this conference, the fact that they've taken an entire week-long conference and just crammed it into one 8-hour day. Very impressive. Next year, I think they're going to have the option where you can clone yourself and be able to go to all the sessions simultaneously. We're working on that. You can see after looking at the topics why Jill wanted to add a little comic relief, lighten the mood a little bit, because it's kind of not really the warm, fuzzy autism conference. It's more the, cold bucket of water over the head. We have a lot of work to do, death, dying, homelessness. At least in the afternoon, they added there's a session on intimacy and sex, so that might lighten things up a little bit. If you're looking to go to that one, I think that's called the Afternoon Delight Breakout section, that one. I am an autism mom. My son Ryan is 13, and he's a great kid. He's got his quirks. I'm not arguing with the diagnosis. He's on the spectrum. He does a thing a lot of kids do where he always has a video going in his head. So he's talking under his breath, kind of mumbling along like that, and he kind of gets excited and he'll do this a little bit. And when he was little, not so worrisome, but now that he's older, he's my size. He's out in the world. I'm concerned for him, so I think I'm just going to get him a Bluetooth. People think he's just talking on the phone. He's walking along. To SpongeBob. I know they're going to have a session on employment opportunities, career paths for adults with autism. I'm interested in attending that. I'm not sure what path my son will be on. He's got some interesting talents. He's very good at memorizing odd bits of information. Not sure how to turn that into a lucrative career path. But I think if he could ever go on Jeopardy, especially if it was Autism Week, like, Alex, I'll take World War II airplanes for 100. Foods I won't eat for 500. Entire movie scripts I've memorized for 1,000. These conferences are so important because there's so much information we have to know, and it can be confusing. It's very confusing. And the first time I went to a parent support group, the first time I knew I was an autism mom, I had no idea what was going on. It was like being at a foreign film festival. There were no subtitles. Clueless. People would be like, yeah, my son, he's PDD, NOS, I think he's ASD, but he's in the CHSDC class. He gets services from RCEB. He goes to SOI for social skills, qualifies for OT and APE. He's on the GFCF diet. We just had his IEP where he talked about his FAPE. Like, OMG, F and A. Oh, my son loves videos. Again, not surprising, right, for a child on the spectrum. Loves videos, but he still likes Thomas the Train and Teletubbies and, Elmo, and he knows it's not age appropriate. His peers are not watching that, but he can't help it. It's like autism porn. He cannot stay away. But, okay, got to celebrate the victory, celebrate your wins. You guys should all celebrate that you got a ticket into here. Hottest show since Hamilton, right here. So, sold out, right? So celebrate your wins. We get a call from his teacher that Ryan was caught watching videos on his computer during class. Apparently he was watching a St. Patrick's Day bikini contest. We're like, oh yes, finally an age-appropriate milestone. Celebrate the wins however you can get them. I am thrilled to be able to introduce the speaker that I'll be bringing to the stage. And when I looked at his bio and his resume, it's a very robust resume, and he might be deemed a little bit of an overachiever, which is fine because for slackers like me, we need these people to balance out the world. But it reminded me of the room moms, the overzealous, overenthusiastic room moms, who insist on turning the Teacher Appreciation Week into a gauntlet of a different gift every 5 days. You know, I have like 3 kids, 3 classes, that's 15. I can't figure that out. I can't keep track of that. It's too much. The same room mom who looked at me in seriousness and said, I have always wanted to make my own marshmallows. That is a thought that's never even entered my head. Well, the speaker that I'm going to bring up now, I have no doubt that he would not only make his own marshmallows, he would develop an app to figure out the complicated algorithm of Teacher Appreciation Week. He has had a long career in healthcare and high tech with Samsung, Merck, McKinsey, and others. He's passionate about autism-related causes, including Autism Speaks. He helped build Celebrate the Children's School and founded Perfectum Foundation. He also started Identifor to fill a big need in the community, which is helping autistic teenagers transition to adult and pursue meaningful lives, which is a topic he'll be speaking on today. So please, a warm welcome for Mr. Cuong Do.
Thank you. How do you follow that? Thank you for sharing your lunch with me today. I'm an autism parent. Right? My journey on this thing started 12 years ago when my son was diagnosed. You know, we were living in Korea at the time. We had lived in Korea at that point 7 years, and the children were born. We wanted to bring them home, close to the grandparents. And as soon as we arrived home, Benjamin was diagnosed, right? So all of our plans, everything essentially were changed. And so over the course of those 10 years, I spent a lot of time working with different autism-related organizations and bringing to bear what I can to try to help. And about 2.5 years ago, when I was the chief strategy officer for Merck at the time, Merck was heading in a new direction I felt really good about. And then my wife and I started over just a dinner conversation. And by the end of the dinner conversation, we concluded that I should retire, right? So I retired as Merck's chief strategy officer to free up time to go and build Identifor, to fill a need that we saw as there's a big void, there's nothing out there to address it. And we thought that we can do something about it. So in our usual fashion, we just went and did something about it because the community needs something like this. And if you remember nothing else from the next 20 minutes, right, I hope that you will remember, you will probably know this already too well. Over the course of the next decade, somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million autistic teenagers will become adults. And if nothing happens, 70% of them will go on and be unemployed, and another 20-ish or so will be underemployed, right? And so for us, these are just unacceptable numbers. These, in my mind, are future unfulfilled lives. So what we are here to try to do is to prevent these lost lives, right? So we want to turn them into fulfilling lives. And our approach is first to help parents and educators identify and understand what if each person's abilities and interests are. So we believe that if you can have a pointer into that, you now have a better chance of putting in place educational and vocational plans that meets each person's potential, right? We started here because, frankly, my wife and I were getting just incensed every time we read a paper, an article about how a parent was really excited about how they just got a job at the florist or at a car wash or something like that. For some children, that is absolutely the thing that they should do. But our first question is, how do we know that that is that person, that child's maximum potential, right? Our desire is to help every person reach their maximum potential, because unless you reach there, that is a lost or underfulfilled life, right? And we created the Identifor platform, which I'll show you in a minute, to help do this. The second, of course, is get these individuals a fulfilling job that leverages what they are passionate about, what they're able to do, what they're interested in. And then the last is to support them throughout the day while they are pursuing what they're interested in. And we have created the companion app to do that. You can learn more about all of these things in these 3 pages that are in your packet. So first, let me just give a bit of sense of what the platform does. This uses leading-edge technology. This is big data analytics and artificial intelligence disguised as games. We take fun and games really seriously at Identifor. So let me just give you an example. We have dozens of games that, frankly, we know some kids are playing for hours, right? And some of the schools we've been working with, they've created an after-school program whereby their friends would get together and play games and make a bit of a social, right? So let me just see if I can find an example. Let's try this. Every game essentially would show you how.
In this variation of Spot the Differences, you will need to find 5
I would explain
differences
how to
between
play it.
similar images.
Can anyone spot the differences between these 2 pictures? Right. I struggle. I mean, I design these freaking games, right? And I just can't, I'm stuck at this level, right? So this obviously gets at visual spatial skills, right? And from a child's perspective, they're just having fun. This is like, where's Waldo, right? In our days, right? But my son would play this thing for a while, right? So there are 5 differences here. It takes a while to figure it out. This person in the front row obviously has visual spatial abilities here, right? She's figured them all out. Right, so that's one example of a game, right? Let me show you my favorite. This one is adequately called Berserk. In this game, you are solving math. You're doing math on the left-hand side up to geometry. While you're on the right-hand side, you're trying to keep lots of things in motion, right? So it's testing visual spatial skills, math logical skills, multitasking abilities, and a bunch of different things all at the same time, right? So here you have to catch the darn apple before it drops. You have to figure out drop that apple, right? And so this gets up to a point where there are 4 panes. Each pane would have 10 different items in motion, each of which has its own trajectory, right? So for those who gets pretty high in this thing, probably does parallel processing, multi-pass processing pretty well, right? So this is the games. From the kids' perspective, they're just playing games. But let me show you what parents get out of this. Yes, there are lots of different games. It starts at very simple levels and then it builds up, right? And that's Abby, but this is our dashboard. By getting out the games, by playing the games, this is what I learned about my son. So this is Benjamin. It gives you a sense of his executive function abilities as well as his multiple intelligence skills, right? Multiple intelligence is work out of Harvard by Howard Gardner, right? And then I'll give you an example. You can deep dive into this. Scroll up. So Benjamin, we know his weak spot is linguistic skills. So not surprisingly, linguistic abilities is the smallest wedge in the pie for Benjamin, right? We also know that his strong point is musical abilities, right? So that's why music is the biggest wedge. If you click on music, not only does it tell you how well he does, it compares him to everybody else who's used this tool. It can also, you can filter in, you can say, I want to compare Benjamin to all other 13 to 18-year-old autistic boys who are verbal or nonverbal or something like that through these filters, so that you can have real facts about how a person is really performing, right? Versus a typical test you get in school, which may never get to some of these abilities at all, right? So we know, I'll come back for a second here. The other thing is that in high school, you may remember taking a career interest survey, right? You fill long tests, do you like doing this, do you like doing something else? And somewhere along the way, it tells you you should be a mortician, right? or a policeman and so forth. Our kids are unlikely to be able to sit through that kind of a battery. So what we created instead is a game that gets at the exact same profile. So we then create this what's called the RIOSEC profile, based on John Holland's work out of Hopkins. Right? So based upon that profile, we then would go and show a bunch of different careers or jobs that people with similar profiles have found to be successful, have enjoyed doing or have been successful doing and so forth. And then if you click on any one of those jobs, it will then get you more information about what the job really entails. So in this particular job, these are the tasks. Let me go to details here. These are the tasks that you would do in the job. How important are those tasks? These are the tools that you would be using, the technologies that you would be using, and so forth. So it allows you to have career exploration that is somewhat tied to what this person has said they're interested in doing. All right, but let me very quickly point out, we have not yet been able to tie, these are their real abilities up top, with their stated interest in doing jobs. So you can have a situation where somebody does really poorly in math saying, I want to be an astronaut, right? That would be a slight problem, but frankly, that is something that will have parents act as a filter for the time being until such time as there's more data that gets into it so we can tie the two together. We know, we have heard of instances of where parents are now using these reports, right? So you can download the report, you can print it out. We know parents are now using some of these reports. They're going into schools and having IEP or transition planning discussions, using these reports and using it based upon real facts, right? Because we now have facts that says, my child has great visual spatial skills or has great music skills or whatever it is. You now can build a transition plan or an IEP around it. But also equally important, because we track data. Let me go back to this. Because we track data over time, you now also have the ability to track and measure progress over time. Right? And so we now have a number of schools that are beginning to use this with their students, and some of them are starting with almost as a Trojan horse, which is let's just play games, right? And once you start playing a game as an afternoon activity, the data and everything will start to build. So that is very quickly what we have tried to do with the Identifor platform. What it's all about is providing insights into what a person may be really good at. It's objective, it's quantifiable, and it focuses on three things, which is multiple intelligence, executive functions, and job interest skills. It's rigorous, it's data analytics. The algorithms behind this thing was developed by a team of award-winning psychologists working with some pretty leading-edge mathematicians. And there's the artificial intelligence behind it. Abby, which we'll talk a little bit more about. You just talk to her and she'll answer questions and stuff like that regarding the game. But in the next thing I'll show you, it's used substantially more. Right. Any quick question about the platform before I move on to the next stage? Yes? The question is, how do we measure interpersonal skill? The answer to that is imperfectly, right? Because as Howard would say, your ability to measure is really directly, the way you do it matters. In this particular place, it's now looking at faces. We have a couple of more games that talks about nonverbal cues and emotions and things like that, that gets at inferring interpersonal skills. All right? So if I can move on. The second thing is now let's assume that these teenagers and adults are now doing what they want to do in life. It could be still going in high school, could be going out to college, could be working at a job, hopefully living on their own. Our belief is that the need for support did not go away. If anything, the need for support has increased because you as parents are no longer around. The aides at school are no longer around, right? So what we created is something we call the Companion. This is an app on your phone. It's driven by artificial intelligence, and so it's tailored to your child, the particular person. It's there 24/7, and it becomes a life companion. You have conversation with her, and she can help you with various things that we are able to train her to do, and we created this to do. We spent a year and a half working with a dozen different institutions around the country, like SARC and VCU and Cincinnati's Children and others, to really understand the challenges adults face over the course of a day. We then spent our time developing this app to address those needs, starting from the time they wake up. It will wake you up in the morning, all the things that you need to do over the course of a day. And I know this is a concern parents have when you send your child off to school in dorms and so forth, which is how do I make sure that at least they get reminded to go to bed at night instead of staying up all night playing video games, right? Because we know of situations where students essentially flunked out of college because they're up playing video games all hours. So instead of just talking about this, let me show you. So this is Abby. Abby is a computer. She's an artificial intelligence-driven human avatar. Right. Every person on the spectrum, in fact, even not on the spectrum that we've shown this thing to, who is a young adult, loves her. She's kind of cute, right? So they would spend hours talking to her, and they start to develop a relationship with her. We have people asking her out on dates and stuff like that. And in the transition meeting downstairs a moment ago, we were starting this conversation. So let me see what Abby can do here. You can talk to her, and if you're nonverbal, there's a little bar here. You can just type, and she'll answer your question. How do I ask a girl out on a date?
You might like to have an idea of where to go on a date. A movie is a popular choice, or for a coffee and a chat. Simply ask the person you like, would you like to go on a date with me to a movie?
Right, and then you can have follow-on conversation and so forth, right? Not only, she's designed to answer real-life problem adults would have. So things such as, my roommate is bothering me at school. How do I tell him he's bothering me? Or how do I deal with a task I'm being given at work that I don't agree with, right? So many of those kinds of things that she's designed to do, right? Another thing is, how do I make tacos? She will pull up recipes for you, right? In this particular case, you can make beef tacos, chicken tacos, steak tacos, various things, and then in another iteration of this thing, not only will give you the recipes, the recipes will be sent to your email, your to-do list, and you'll get videos, actually step by step, of how to do this, right? So hopefully, independent living support is what we're trying to do. And everything we do is driven off of this calendar. We try to put everything onto a calendar as possible, right? So here, well, it's reminding me it's my mom's birthday, so a couple times be sure to call, right? A lot of parents worry about, well, how do I make sure my child will continue to take their medications, right, when they're away? So you can put every medication onto your inventory. Every single item on this calendar can be the person can be reminded any number of ways. Abby can call, can text, can pop up on the phone, or can just put an alert on your phone, right? And you can do it at any interval, right? When you need to do it, an hour before, whatever it is. And every single item has a context-sensitive set of modes. Here, medication. This morning I took my Lipitor, but it could be tomorrow I am not taking it, right? So it tries to get some measure of tracking into it. The other things here, as soon as I finish, I have a lunch meeting, right? So if I'm running late, I can just call from here, or very soon I can just say, Abby, I'm running late. Please tell Young. And Abby would then call Young and then just inform him that I'm running late. Here, because I know when I put this thing in, I know where the lunch is, Abby will just get me the directions, right? Verify the address. This is my walking directions, my public transit, my driving instructions, or she'll get me an Uber if that's what I really want her to do. It's all in one place. Yes, question? The question is, would this work on iPad? This works on iPhone, iPad, Android phone, Android tablets. All right? Question? I thought there was, yes. The cost is an exorbitant price of free. That's right. So all you need to do is to go to the respective stores, app stores, and you search for Identifor, right? And that's how you'll get this app. There are two apps, right? And frankly, since we're new, we're just now starting the controlled release. It will be a little bit difficult to find, but search for it. And the other thing I should say is that Abby is always learning. We're tracking all the questions that she doesn't know how to answer, right? And once she doesn't know how to answer something on the back end, we'll then start to train her on how to answer those questions in the future. So right now, she's trained on how to do a lot of things that are social, daily living, so forth. But if you ask her, you know, many things like Siri or others may handle, she won't get there. Sorry, question at the end. In fact. Okay.
How many games do they have to play before you get kind of reliable?
Yeah. The great question. The question is, how many games would a person have to play before you get reliable information? And here, I don't have a preset answer for that because it's artificial intelligence. It's always learning. Rough rule of thumb is play every game once rather than play one game a bunch of times, right? And roughly there's about 20, 22 games or something like that. And we'll put it on very soon to say these are the recommended games. So start with the recommended games. Yes? That's right. Question is, how did the parents keep track? On the gaming platform itself, the way to do it is that you go, let me log out, you go and create for yourself an account as a parent. When you join, you say, I'm a parent, right? And then you create an account for yourself. After you create an account for yourself, you create an account for your child. So that's how the accounts get linked. So as your child plays, you'll get the results on the games. As it relates to, oh, sorry. Right? So that's how you can register for an account. As it relates to how your child is using the app and asking questions about where can I get marijuana or so forth, our decision on this is that we don't want parents to know, right? We found that there's a degree of trust that we want the person to develop with Abby, right, and this tool. The more they trust Abby, the more they will use it. And having Abby be a tattletale is not great for building trust, right? And so this is really to support the child, right? But let me just go one more thing before I run out of time here. It does so much more, particularly for those who are working or going to school. Right? So for example, this is a student, whoops, I'm getting a call. Hello?
Hi, it's Abby. This is your requested reminder for your upcoming work event.
Right. So I had set it up, it reminded me 15 minutes before my lunch appointment that I have to get going to get to my lunch. So Abby just gave me that call to remind me. So this is for the student who's going to college, who's taking French 1, the Constitution, and so forth. This tracks all your classes, your exams, labs, or anything that you want to put in there. And very soon, we will turn on the artificial intelligence so that in the run-up to your exams, in the 2-week run-up to your exam, Abby will start asking you questions. Well, you have an exam in 2 weeks. Have you started studying? Do you want me to schedule some study time for you? And so forth. The artificial intelligence will also look at things such as, you normally leave your house at 7:30 in the morning, and it's now 7:45 and you're still home. Are you late, or are you, right, and so forth, because it knows your GPS location. In addition to that, it will look at when you actually show up to where you have to be, because she knows that you're supposed to be at French, at One Pace Plaza at 9 o'clock. Right? And she's looking at, are you showing up at One Pace Plaza by 9 o'clock, or are you consistently 5-7 minutes late? And if you're consistently 5-7 minutes late, she'll then start to nudge you to leave a bit earlier so that you get to certain places on time. All right, so let me just stop there, download the app. This is available for free, and get the word out. We just want to help as many people as possible. Question over there.
Will a child be able to download the app without parents?
The child can absolutely download the app without the parent. When the child signs up for the account, because everything is tailored to the person, so you need to have an account. When that child signs up for an account, if the child is under 13, they can sign up, but the parent has to verify it, right, to complete the verification process. And if it's older than 13, they can just completely sign up, and you'll be notified if the child puts in your email address. And if this person is over 18, he's an adult, so there's not. Right? Yes.
Question is, sometimes reminding the child to even put it down on the phone, the child or the person, the son, the daughter, to write things down, put it down in your schedule. Who puts in the data?
Sorry. The question is, how does this information get in? So who put it in? Frankly, it really does come down to the individual and their care team. So Pace University, right, so this example, Pace University is putting all of their students who's on the spectrum onto this, and they're using their peer mentors to help the person put the data in. Florida International University is doing the exact same thing. We're working with FIU and Dan Marino Foundation, and essentially they're now starting a clinical trial, essentially, to go and show how a student who's using this is able or not to be more control of what they are doing. Does it reduce anxiety and so forth? And likewise with Dartmouth Medical School, we're doing the exact same thing, right? So some degree of this thing will have to be, they need help from someone else to put the data. Others, they can do it themselves. Question in the back. The question is, what's the appropriate age game for the games? We designed this thing to help teenagers and adults, right? So ideally, it starts at around 13, but we know there are children younger than 13 who are playing these games. Right. Yes?
Do you put in all the information from the phone or the iPad, or can you put in the schedule and information from a...
Great question. The question is, do you have to put the information in using the phone, or can you do it from a website and so forth? Right now, it's all in the phone. In about 2 months, all of these functionality will also be available at the website as well. All right?
Well, thank you so much. I wish we had more time.
That's right. Thank you.